Okay, we're on the last leg here. They have a separate section for English learners. Like I mentioned before, many of the accommodations are the same or very similar to an IEP. So I'm going to just highlight over a few that are slightly different or maybe just need to be reinforced. The reader is actually the same, whether the student has an IEP or a PSP. But I wanted to reiterate that a student who has a reader can be read to the first time without being asked. And any child who has a reader, if they want to hear it again, they need to ask the prompter to read the prompt again. So don't just read it to them 10 times over. Have them start practicing asking for it the second time. Simplified language, I briefly mentioned it in the last video. It's similar to the paraphrasing. Basically, it's a word for word translation. It can break directions into a part or segment using similar words. You can't define a word or teach a vocabulary or tell students what to do. They need to do this first, then this. This is during state testing. I realize you will do this type of prompting during regular instruction. This was a sample I used earlier. Changing the word assessment to test is appropriate. The first one is talking about simplifying a passage, and you cannot simplify a passage in state testing. It is only used for directions. Oral native language support is something that we mostly use throughout the year and not on state assessment. That would be assisted primarily because we don't have a lot of people who speak the native language. But we use this sometimes. Maybe you have a student who speaks the same language as a student who just moved in from Japan, and so they may support one another. A language support for you would be the In Any Language resource, which is a phone number you can write down. I'm getting ready to tell you. Here you go. Write down 1-866-908-6156. And you can give the operator your code, which is 2701. Miss Rand and Miss Hoffman usually put that information in your green ESL folder that you will get. I have used it. It is wonderful. They will translate and let you help. It will help you, not necessarily talking to students, but talking to families. So that is very helpful throughout the year. Dictionaries for ESL students, we have used Bilingual English. We do not really use the electronic anymore because it cannot have internet capabilities, and most of the electronic ones do. So we have not been using those. We're not allowed to define the words. So basically, it's almost like a thesaurus and not really like a dictionary. Scribing, as mentioned before, it is word for word. Put the punctuation in. Let the student put the punctuation and the capital letters in on their own, or they can tell you where they want it to go. Alternative programs, that would be alternate assessment students. And like I mentioned before, they do have an assessment that they give twice in the year. Transitional strategies are used with these students to help diminish the use of the accommodations as they are needed. It's ongoing, it's always evaluated, and it's important. Usually you'll have an assistant, or Ms. Faraj herself will be in part of that alternate assessment in your classroom. The testing itself will be done by Ms. Faraj outside of your classroom. Some of the students who have alternate assessment have assistive technology, and Ms. Faraj and her assistants are able to provide additional directions on that. They are allowed to use those, such as this one. The example here is a 4-button answer switch, and that's allowed to be used as well on the alternate assessment. Manipulatives, they cannot lead the student to the answer, have to be content free, and we've kind of already talked about that. So scripted assessment, this is again for alternate assessment students. So mostly for Ms. Faraj, the proctor can wait 15 seconds in between readings and then automatically reread the next question if he does not know the answer. And that's fine since it is in the IEP. So if it is stated in the IEP. And we already talked about the scribing is very similar. The reinforcement behavior strategies might look very different for a student with alternate assessment. However, as long as it's consistent throughout the year and follows the other administration code and inclusion code, then it is acceptable. Okay. That is the end of my slideshow. I will have one more question, and then I need you to please make sure you fill out the signature sheet for the administration and inclusion code. And most importantly, if you have any questions for me, please do not hesitate to ask. I am happy to answer them. Amanda Turner can also help answer questions. She has helped. She has been trained on state assessment as well. So I think that will work for this time, and I will be happy to help you later if you need it.